Biomutant was one of the most anticipated games of 2021, so why did it land subpar reviews and massive online criticism, even if the launch wasn't afflicted with game-breaking glitches or bugs? I'm Nash from Off the Shelf Media, and today we're looking at what went wrong with Biomutant. At the time of publishing this video, the Biomutant release trailer is the highest viewed video on the THQ Nordic YouTube channel, clocking in at 9.7 million views at 4 years after release. But in all honesty, I'd never seen that one. I remember distinctly the cinematic trailer that was released 3 years prior to the game, which instantly caught my interest. But then, nothing. It felt like a distant memory of something that never came into fruition. I came across zero news during that time about its release. That is, until Chance would place a sealed copy on PC for $6 at my local thrift store. I immediately went home, plugged in the unused digital download code, and enjoyed it. It felt weird seeing that same cinematic trailer after all those years as the game started, and even weirder playing out that trailer almost frame by frame at the start of the tutorial. Over the next week, my opinion started to shift. The experience of seeing that trailer and immediately playing it cemented this interest in trying to understand how a game with all the right ingredients was steadily becoming boring. Why that trailer that managed to linger in my mind became the boiling point for the enjoyment to be had. If you had a chance to look at my article, you know it isn't because of a fault in the gameplay. Biomutant manages to have some of the most fluid and consistent use of movement I've ever experienced in a game. The reaction from controls, the dynamic style from the massive list of moves come together in a non-stop flurry of action in a vibrant backdrop. The instantaneous transition from running to sprinting or melee combat to seamless somersaulting gunplay embeds you in the kung fu-based rapid action combat you didn't know that you wanted. It has a familiar feel to Warner Brothers games like Mad Max or Shadow of Mordor, but with more spice in the form of speed, which makes sense given that the staff of Experiment 101 had worked on some of those titles. This desire of theirs to create an original work for the studio's flagship game is apparent in the game's concept. You're a biologically twisted raccoon, ferret thing trying to save the world using mutations and kung fu magic while wielding a homemade grenade launcher and toilet plunger baton. That's awesome. But that's kind of all you get. There certainly isn't a lack of systems that make up the game either. There's crafting, multiple layers of morality-based decisions, water, land, mech suit, and air vehicles, each with their own customization, a flurry of side quests and characters with their own storylines, environmental hazards across 7 biomes with towns, villages, outposts, ruins, factories, and cities to explore, and most of them chock full of shops and unique dialogue options. Fortunately, it all starts to feel repetitive. Each dynamic trait introduced is rendered down by an equally lackluster mechanic. The dynamic trait's fall-off starts in character creation. If you try to alter your stats from whatever the base option is that you pick, your character starts to look like they exclusively eat sheet metal. Later on, when you're offered moral choices, you have to weigh philosophies of each tribe to support the one that you believe is the best course of action to save the world, which often involves the violent overthrow or annihilation of another tribe. But these become soured beyond redemption by the black and white morality imposed by the literally black and white aura figures that strain out the dynamic and leave you with a heavily reduced narrative impact. Crafting feels dull quickly too. After level 10, I had pretty much all the gear I would use for the rest of the game. The vehicles are excluded from the crafting mechanic and instead replaced with quests that only offer cosmetic alterations when they have a pathetic impact in combat later on. While they make sense to use for areas with environmental restrictions, the mounts feel incredibly out of place in general. Think about the concept of the game. You're a wild animal twisted by aggressive mutation from pollution. You have humanoid features and abilities, even many that go beyond human capabilities. While most of the time you walk on 2 legs, in sprint mode your character runs on all 4s like most mammals, so why even have mounts? Why did the developers not use this feature included in the game as a more unique mechanic with dedicated perks? And in doing so, pushing the player to embrace their more natural, animalistic state to contrast their human aspects. This is a good example of the game's unique concept getting buried in mundane RPG elements. Around level 20, the game feels like a generic early 2000s title in terms of gameplay. It's like The Simpsons Hit and Run. A fun game for sure, but at its core, it's an oversimplified version of GTA. While fun to play, you're going to have far more fun with Grand Theft Auto, and for a much longer amount of time. Grand Theft Auto doesn't compromise its own universe as a limitation from its IP. It is unlimited and infinitely scalable for the game world that they want to make, like all of the best RPGs. I would go so far as to say it's the theory behind every great game, even every good work of fiction. It does not compromise its identity. Looking back on that cinematic trailer, it makes perfect sense why it was so captivating. The art style, sound, movement, and fight sequences showed a cohesive game with an inviting, fresh concept. All that falls apart with the filler introduced. It strips away the good parts of the game as if the conversation for the development team centered around entering in as many cliches of the genre into one title, rather than refining the mechanics toward the concept that separated it. The worst example of conflicting design comes in terms of atmosphere. This is really what determines if someone is going to think the game is either good or bad. The narrator and dialogue is so bad that they even introduced a setting to disable it in one of the earlier patches of the game. First off, it has nothing to do with David Shaw Parker's performance, who voices the narrator throughout the game. He's an incredible voice actor, and I think he delivered exactly what he was asked to do. The problem is the quality and style of the dialogue in contrast with the storyline and environment. You're tasked with making incredibly heavy decisions, holding the fate of many lives in the outcomes that you choose. Yet, if you've not disabled the narrator, you're constantly bombarded by an eloquent British accent saying things like squivips, mechton, bang balls, porky puff, or...
It seems dirty down here in the dirt.
It's like Dr. Seuss wrote the dialogue for Mad Max, but the plot to Road Warrior stayed the same. Now everything is more obvious in hindsight, and I don't want to rag on the game too much, seeing as how the possibility of a sequel is hovering around 0% chance at the moment. But I would like to offer what I think would have been the easiest change that would take the game from just playable to incredible. In relation to a newer title with a heavily anticipated sequel soon to be released, Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yokai. It's one of the best games I've ever played, period. If you haven't already, check out our review down below. Why it is so good is because it adheres completely to the universe it's in. The entire game feels like it's led by its atmosphere and use of minimalism. It's not the type of game every studio could pull off, and those elements are not necessarily something that would work well with every title. But Biomutant, I think, would and was honestly already halfway there, with the HUD design being relatively minimal and not constantly blocking your view of the perfectly crafted environment. They really want you to look at it while you're playing. If they had taken it a step further and removed all the dialogue, yes, I mean all of it, and minimized the HUD a bit more, it would have been such a better experience. This would play more into the fact that you're still an animal. The current state of the game shows the other NPCs making noises as the narrator sometimes translates it. It removes any kind of dynamic interaction. By totally removing the clear communication and having the narrative derive more from gestures of these NPCs, these interactions would have carried far more weight in the universe of the game and would have left the moments after your heaviest decisions with silence, to contemplate your choice as you stand in the aftermath. Like the haikus in Ghost of Tsushima, which I so often discovered right around the corner from an outpost I had just razed to the ground. Those moments put you in the calmness of your surroundings to reflect on existential philosophy, like a true warrior poet. This type of contemplation would have made the side quests in Biomutant more interesting, just trying to interpret their end result. I'm not suggesting a removal of the journal, but encouraging the player to think about it themselves and not popping up a waypoint without deliberately selecting it. It would also have demanded a more intense animation process, ensuring that the character models offered fairly recognizable gestures, which at times felt somewhat lacking during the cutscenes. Not bad, but the portion of the game that lacked fluidity the most. This game is disappointing because the concept seems so fresh. It's certainly a well-made game, especially given the small team that made it. I don't think it's worth the massive review bombs it received from the people who pre-ordered it or bought it at full price, but I can certainly understand where the frustration is coming from, and they aren't necessarily wrong. It's a type of cool new idea you want to see more often. Unfortunately, in its current state, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. The unique features begin to feel like a decorative garnish. The more you dig in, the narrative and atmosphere elements lack too much substance to carry the game to a higher score. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you get updates on future videos like this one, and let us know in the comments what you think. I really do hope there's a sequel that undergoes some refinement to fine-tune everything and show off all the good things they did, But right now, nothing like that is on the horizon for Experiment 101. Till next time.